All right, so like I indicated, we are going to do the dummy variable regression because in your work along the line, you'll be incorporating categorical variables. And so you want to understand and know how dummy variables work. All right, so what is a dummy variable? So this is a very basic way I'm going to treat it so that you don't complicate matters for yourself. A dummy variable is a categorical independent variable with two or more levels. Okay, with two or more levels. Examples will do for you. Now, there are several names for it. Sometimes some people call it dichotomous variable because the levels are two. Sometimes if the levels are more, we use the word dummy variables or categorical variables. They are the independent variables in a multiple regression. So the multiple regression now becomes a dummy variable regression. If there are more than two levels, then the number of dummy variables needed is equal to the number of levels minus 1. I'll give you an example so you come to appreciate it. Let's take an example like, let me just write it here. An example like gender. Okay, when you know gender, gender is a dummy variable and it can be split into two levels. What is the first level? The first level is male and the second level is female. Please, the fact that I brought the male and the female does not mean that the male is important than the female. No, I could have brought the other one first. We can code this dummy variable. Coding it doesn't put any importance also to it. We can code the male as 1 and the female as 0. And so when we get into the regression, we will put at the heading gender, and below the gender will be male, female, male, 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 female, 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 male, female. Okay, and that will be the levels. Another example of a dummy variable, which is not just two levels, is, let's say, marital status. Marital status. So when you look at marital status, it has quite a number of levels. But we want to consider, in practical sense, we want to consider 4 levels. The first level is single. Single. Okay. The second level is married. Married. The third level is divorced. Divorced. And the final level is widowed. Yeah, even though some will have other strange ones, these are the ones we want to interest ourselves with. Okay. Don't worry, at the end of everything, if you have a question, you can ask me. So that is a typical example of it. Now let's take another example in a banking industry. You can have in a banking industry ownership. Ownership will become the dummy. Okay, ownership. And the ownership, you have some levels. The first level is state banks. State banks. Okay. And we can code them. Okay. The next one is going to be private domestic banks. Okay, private domestic banks. And then we can have the last one to be foreign banks. Okay, foreign owned banks. So in this case, we have 3 levels. Okay, 3 levels. Now, there's something we call, and you can take another one. Okay, for example, in a bank, you can, let's say in an oil. Okay, I know, Diana, you are doing something related to oil industry. And you are looking at energy. And you're looking at energy consuming countries. Okay, let's say in Africa. Energy consuming countries in Africa. And one of the factors that would determine these energy consuming industries are the economic blocks. Economic blocks. Or let me even talk about energy consuming countries in the world. Energy consuming countries in the world. And one of them is the income level. Income level. So income level is a dummy. And under income level, you have low income, you have high income, you have lower middle income, lower middle, okay, and then you have upper middle. Okay, hold on, I think somebody has got a question. Let me just delete this first. Okay, and then you have upper middle. Of course. So in the order in which we were doing it, it will be high, sorry, it'll be low, lower middle, lower middle, upper middle, and then finally high. So that's how it's going to be. Okay. Another thing that I'll say is indicating is that we can have capitalization, bank listing. So you can have bank listing. Okay. Listing of banks. And then you can have one group, let's say listed banks, and then unlisted banks. So banks that have been listed on the stock market and the banks that have not been listed. So these are all dummy variables. Okay, these are all dummy variables. Now there's something we call the reference category. The reference category. So when you go into the dummy variable, okay, even if you are doing it in R, when you are doing the reference category is the base. So you pick one as the base. Now sometimes the R software will pick it for you. Okay, you pick one as the base in order of alphabetical. So in this case, the one that is alphabetically, which is female here, will be selected as the reference category. So anytime you do the regression, you are going to have inside the regression one of the independent variables to be gender, watch it, gender female. That's all you're going to have. But you will not, oh sorry, you're going to have something like gender okay, so we are using the female as the reference category, as the base category. And so you will have gender male. Okay, you will have gender male. So you will not see gender female. And so maybe you have the coefficient for gender male to be 2.9. But you will not see gender female. And the reason is because the male has been brought in here with reference to, relative to the female, which you don't see. So the ones you don't see in the analysis is the reference category, or is the base. Okay. Now the same way when you go to the marital status, you don't have to identify the reference category. The software will do it for you. The marital status, you can have, so let's assume the marital status has been represented as MS. Okay. So you can have in the regression coefficient, you can have MS married. Okay. You can also have MS single. And then you can also have MS widowed. But you will not see MS divorced. And the reason why you will not see MS divorce is that divorce would have been used as a reference category. And so anytime I mention married, I am mentioning married in relation to divorced. Okay. Anytime I mention single, I mention single relative to divorced. Anytime I mention widowed, I am mentioning widowed relative to divorced. Okay. So This is important because what is happening here is that you have identified, the software has identified a reference category. Because dummy variables, you can't talk about one of them without connecting it to the reference category. Okay, without connecting it to the reference category. So this is a very important thing, because if you don't understand this, and in fact you have to understand this to be able to interpret dummy variables. Okay, now let's go to our previous one that we had, the one for the banks. So in this case, ownership, let's represent ownership, say by let me say yes, we are looking for a representation for ownership. So let's say OW. Let's represent it by OW. And so you will have OW states. Let me just write that as one of the dummies, and then OW private. But you will not see OW foreign, because that will be used as a reference category. Okay. So anytime you mention state banks, you are saying state banks are doing well relative to foreign banks. And anytime you are talking about private banks, private domestic, you say private domestic banks are doing well relative to foreign. So foreign now becomes a reference category. The same way when you go to the income level, okay, when you go to the income level, you can have an income level, like you can have a dummy, a level for the low, a level for the lower middle, a level for the upper, okay, and nothing for the high, because the high becomes what? The reference category. Okay. So it's very important you understand this, because how you interpret these things are very important. All right, so these are some of the names for dummy variables are indicated: binary, dichotomous, 0, 1 variables, and all of that. So look at this dummy variable. In fact, we will learn how to interpret dummy variable, but I want to just give you one interpretation of this dummy variable. Return on assets depends on a constant, 500, and then 20 times of profit. Return on assets of a company depends on the type of the firm. And the type has been explained here as whether it is domestic or foreign. So if it is domestic, it is coded as what? 1. And if it is foreign, it is coded as 0. Okay. Now, and it also depends on the size. The size here is the total asset of the company. Okay. Size is represented by the log of the total asset of the company. All right. So how do we interpret a constant? You come to learn that a constant is a beautification. It has no specific economic interpretation, so we don't bore much ourselves with it. How do we interpret the profit? Now, the profit is not a dummy variable. It is a numerical variable. It's not a categorical variable. So it rises and falls. It rises and falls. And so what does the 20 in front of the profit mean? This is how we interpret it. The unit of measurement will always refer it as a unit. We will not use words like percentages. We will not use words like dollar, hours, or anything. We'll just use the word unit. As time goes on, you will learn that we will learn how to use those real, units of measurement. So what does the 20 in front of the profit mean to return on assets? What it means is that a 1 unit increase in the profit of the firm, a 1 unit increase in the profit of the firm increases return on assets by 20 units. You see, I use the word unit. A 1 unit increase in the profit of the firm increases return on assets by 20 units. Why increases? Increases because there's a plus in front of the return on assets. So when there's a plus in front of the thing, it must be, and there's an increase here. You see, plus means they are all moving together. Okay. Now, let me interpret again for the size. Size is the total asset of a firm, okay, and this is actually plus, and it also rises and falls. Okay, So because it rises and falls, it's going to be increase, decrease, something like that. Okay. Now, how do you interpret it? Now, size is 5. The coefficient of size is 5. So you indicate and say that a 1 unit increase in the size of the firm increases return on asset, the dependent variable, by 5 units. A 1 unit increase in the size of the firm increases return on asset by 5 units. Now later on, we'll come to the real interpretation when the logarithms have been taken. When you have log. But for now, we keep it as unit. The last one to interpret is the type of the firm. Now you can see that the type of the firm is not a numerical variable. So you can't say that it rises and it falls. Okay. You can say that profit rises and falls, size rises and falls, because they are numerical variable. But you don't say that the type rises from domestic to foreign and from foreign to domestic. That is funny. Okay. Because it's a categorical variable. It's a dummy, static. It's not dynamic. So the way you interpret it is slightly different. It's very, very slightly different. This is how you interpret this 30, which is type. And remember, the 30 here being type is for 1 for domestic. If it is for 0, if you put 0 here, 0 times 30 will be gone. So there will be nothing. So we are going to interpret it for domestic, but in relation to the foreign. So this is how you interpret it. Okay? You indicate that on average, and of course, everything that I said, you have to hold everything constant. Okay? On average, because I'm interpreting size, I'll have to hold the profit and the size. I'm interpreting type. I have to hold profit and size constant. So he said on average, given profit and size of the company. Given the profit and size of the company. So you are holding them given. In fact, all the others, when you're interpreting any one, you have to hold the others constant. So on average, given size and profit, okay, return on asset is expected to be 30 units. That's how you do it. Return on asset is expected to be 30 units more. That word is very important. Return on asset is expected to be 30 units more. 30 units more if the firm is domestic than foreign. Okay. If the firm, okay, is domestic than foreign. Return on asset is expected to be 30 units more if the firm is domestic than foreign. You see, I didn't say that if the firm moves from being domestic to foreign. No, it is domestic than foreign. So if it is domestic is carrying a value of 1. So that means that you have 30 still standing. So return on asset is going to be, is expected to be, is predicted to be 30 units more. Why more? Because there's a plus in front of the 30. If there was a minus, you would say that return on asset is expected to be 30 units less if the firm is domestic than foreign. But here is plus, so it's 30 units more if the firm is domestic than foreign. So you see, even though foreign is a reference category, I spoke about the domestic in relation to the foreign. So the way you interpret dummy variables are very, very important. Okay, and they are not the same as the way you interpret numerical variables, which are always changing. So these are some of the interpretations that you have. On average, given profit and size, ROA is expected to be 30 units more when the firm is domestic than foreign. Now, if you can remember the venture data that we had, and this is just a way to take you back slightly to that data set, okay? Just to refresh your memory slightly. This is so slightly. So this is the data set we used to have, where the quantity demanded of gin bitters is affected by the price of gin the complement price of gin, the income of the people in the area, the location of the shop, which is a dummy variable coded here, the occupation of the people, as well as the religion of the people. Okay, you remember that? So this was a locative venture data. Now let's go back and then apply some dummy tricks into what we have indicated there. So the quantity of gin depends on price, income, location, and religion. We know all of this. And so that's what I'm having here. Remember, okay, it depends on price. I've removed the complement price, okay, just two. And I've also removed the occupation. But these are the observations. Now look at it carefully. We are learning something about dummy variables. Price is what? It's a numerical variable. It's not categorical, so it's not a dummy. Income is a numerical variable, and so it's not a dummy. Location is a categorical variable. And even though I can code it, I use the actual English words for it. So it's a dummy variable. Religion is a categorical variable, so it's a dummy variable here. All right. I can code them. I can code them. For example, watch the first one for the dummy. Location, R, rural. The first one is rural. So I can say that let the first anything called rural to be what? 0. So it means that whenever I get to this section, I'll write 0. The next one, I'll write 0. Anything equal to urban must be 1. So the next one, I'll write 1. The next one, I'll code it as 1. And the last one, I'll code it as 0. The same thing with religion. We can say that anything Christian should be what? 1. Anything Christian should be 0. All other things that are not Christian should be 1. So I'm now kind of creating a dummy column for Christian. What would that be? So it means that the first one, which is Christian, will be 0. The next one, Muslim, will be 1. Buddhist will be 1. Muslim will be 1. Muslim will be 1. Okay. And that is what you see there. Okay. For this first column for Christian. That is what I did for Christian. But if I am doing for Muslim, so I need to create another one. This is when you are coding it. It means that for Muslim, suppose I create a column for Muslim. The first one is Christian, so it will be 0. The next one is Muslim, so it will be 1. Buddhist will be 0. Muslim will be 1. Muslim will be 1. Okay. So that is how you do coding in a dummy variable. And this you can easily do it in Excel and then bring it here. Or you can even command R to do that for you. And we shall do this in the course of this. Okay. So you need to be able to do dummy variable coding every single time that you are doing your work. Now, the good thing about R is that if you don't code them and you still leave them like this, it's fine. R will be able to make beautiful, sensible sense from that for you. So there's no problem with that. Excel will not be able to do, but R will do. So learn how to interpret dummy. We'll come back to this, and